Hey everyone, welcome to another Building Blocks. I have a short confession. I have actually not played Block in the last 2 weeks since I recorded another video. There's a PTQ in Durham, North Carolina, and it was standard, so the last 2 weeks of my life was all standard, and I played a blue, red, white control deck to a pretty mediocre finish. And didn't win, obviously, or not obviously, I guess just unfortunately. So, I didn't really know what to play this week, so I looked through all the dailies, and the premiere event I looked at had 7 Esper lists and a mono red list. And I was like, wow, Esper's really popular. That's kind of weird. And then I kept looking through dailies, and I saw a Vis deck or something very close to it. I'm like, oh, this deck's pretty sweet. I have these Ralzareks I've wanted to play for a very long time. So in block especially, it's like, oh, I like blue-red planeswalkers especially, so let's try this deck. I thought it'd be fine against Esper because it has Rakdos Return and Aetherlings and a bunch of planeswalkers. But I'm not sure what the matchup's actually going to be like since I have a ton of removal. It's not super useful against them. But anyway, this is a just Grixis control deck that I've played it a couple games. I haven't played that much. Because I just got back from this is the day after the PTQ, so I haven't really done anything since. But I lost my train of thought. Okay, so the main goal of this deck is just like kill their creatures, try to control the board state, put out a planeswalker if you have to, and accrue card advantage that way, and then eventually finish them with Aetherling, just like every control deck since Aetherling was printed. To that end, we have a nice little suite of two-drop burn spells. We've got Turn and Burn, a very good card in this format. It's pretty expensive if you want to turn and burn, but Burn's pretty good on its own, and I keep taking cards away from my deck, which is pretty annoying. But Turn and Burn is the only card I know that actually kills both sides of... or not both sides, it kills the Voice of Resurgence, which is super annoying for control decks, because you have to kill it over and over and over again, but Turn and Burn, you just kill it once. Of course, you have to wait till turn 5, but that's generally what the Is It Static Casters are for, another quote-unquote removal spell. It's actually just a really efficient blocker that can, in pairs and with Ralzarek, you can gun down two toughness creatures, which is the most prevalent in this format. There's a ton of like Rakdos Cacklers, Voice Resurgence, not ideal to kill, but since you're not wasting a card with a Statcaster, it's fine. Guild Mages, stuff like that. They also let you block, which you don't have any creatures in your deck other than the Statcasters and the Aetherlings, so it gives you a little bit of board presence and to protect your Planeswalkers. The other removal spells are Far and Away, another split card, amazing card. I played it in Esper a couple articles ago. It still performs the same function. It's also very good against the green decks of the format, which have tokens like Advent of the Worm or Voice of Resurgence. You can obviously bounce their token and get rid of one of their creatures. Is It Charm is actually not that great at any of its modes, but the fact that it does them all makes it pretty good in this deck. It's pretty good against aggro just because it acts as a shock. I've never actually used the looting mode, but I know it exists, in this deck at least. And it at least does something against the control decks by being a Spell Pierce. And that's pretty much it for the bare bones. I guess you can lump in Ralzarek with the burn spells, because really every time you play him, you're just gonna either untap a Staticaster and gun something down, or you're going to just bolt something with his -2 ability. I've yet to ult this guy and get any reasonable number of turns. I ulted him once before and I got 1 turn. It was pretty miserable. I think I still lost the game. But, yeah, whatever. Still a sweet card. Lightning Bolt on a stick that can keep pumping him out is not to be overlooked. And, of course, more controlling elements of the deck. We have a couple counterspells, Counterflux, 2 Counterflux, and 3 Syncopate. Counterflux is mainly just the only reasonable counterspell you can play. I think the format has Cancel and Counterflux, and the blue-black spell, which I can't remember, the Psychic Strike. This is a little better than Psychic Strike, because you don't want to fill up their graveyard against like Virals, the Scar Striped, or something like that. And Counterflux does have the extra added utility of being uncounterable by control decks. Syncopate, just, a cheap counterspell. It's not that good, but it's not really that bad either. I board it out a lot because I'm not a big fan of it, but it's worth including in most main decks. And the win conditions in this deck are... I guess I can touch on Jace, but I feel like I've talked about this card quite a bit since I've played it a bunch. It's basically helps you out in the creature matchups by decreasing their power, gives you some cards, and can eventually win the game on its own. It's basically every single Jace that's existed. Except for this one actually deals with creatures. I don't think any of the... Well, I guess the Mind Sculptor does, but that one's cheating, so... but we're winning primarily with Aetherling and Rakdos Return. Against aggro decks, I usually just hold Rakdos Return because you never have time to play it until it's like for 7 or 8. 6, 7, 8. So you can just like get some damage with Aetherling and then 8 them. Or you can either just Rouse the Wreck and then Rakdos Return to kill them. But against like slower decks, you can actually just jam out Rakdos Return, try and discard their hands, or if they stumble, it's a very good tool for that as well. But primarily you're just going to play Aetherling, and it's unkillable and can kill them very fast. Mana base is pretty standard. I have a trio of dual lands in my colors, and 2 of the playsets of the Guildgates, Izzet and Rakdos. None of the Dimir Guildgate, because red and blue are more prominent colors than, say, blue and black. Like, the only blue-black card I really have is Far and Away. Or is it... So, and I wanted to play a bunch of islands, I assume, the deck creator, since I actually just copied mostly the entire deck, word for word, or card for card. And there's a bunch of islands. I think there's 8 here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. 7 islands, and a bunch of dual lands. Pretty easy. The sideboard is something I'm not sure of, like pretty much every sideboard I've ever played. Woodlock Crawlers for green decks is a very, very good deck against for control decks, not against them, because it can block pretty much every threatening creature in the format. There are some like red creatures that are pretty annoying, and obviously the control creatures like Blood Baron or Aetherling it doesn't block, but it blocks Smiters and Voice Resurgence without any drawbacks, and it can also kill them. Like, Woodlock Crawler can attack for 2 unblockably, and you can untap with Rousarek to block, which has come up a few times. So it's a pretty good tool to have defensively. Also defensively, I have some Hazum Orders for board sweeping, and the rest of my cards are dedicated more towards control. I guess I can have a Rakdos Return for mid-range decks that want to just play a bunch of big spells, but generally boarded against control along with 4 Nightveil Specters. Okay, whatever. I'll fix this eventually. 4 Nightveil Specters, 2 Dispels, and a Counterflux. It's pretty standard. Nightveil Specter is a very good card in the control mirror. It lets you play their spells. And just obviously counter spells are good, because there are very few creatures, and I have all this removal that's not very good against them. So that's it for the deck tech portion. I'm going to save this, and the daily's in 5 minutes, so I'll see you all in round 1.